So I'm going to take a little bit of a different tack on all of this, and I'm not being rude, but I'm going to leave the introduction of myself to weave into kind of the narrative of this presentation. So the title of my presentation is Making Friends with Wintermute. And I'm going to tell you what that means in just a second. And as always, we're going to start with a story. And we're going to start with a story about AI. Now, how many people are familiar with this? All right, so this is the story that we're going to use as the basis. Ultimately, this is my favorite story about artificial intelligence that's ever been written. And it's written by William Gibson, and I'm going to give you the very short description of what this book is about if you don't know. So essentially what this book is about, it's about sort of a family called the Tessier Ashpools that basically have own a giant Zaibatsu corporation, and they've started to clone themselves, and they've become kind of these really insular, very weird people, and they've shot themselves into space, and they live on a space station. And essentially what the story is really about is that they've built a computer, and all the regulations around basically turning a computer into a sentient AI have made them basically create what is essentially the rest of the narrative, which is a giant sort of heist story, where they bring together a team of people to essentially free this AI and make it sentient. And that AI's name in the book is Wintermute, exactly. And so Wintermute, they try to, they essentially free Wintermute by basically performing a series of kind of crimes. And I've always been a huge fan. I read this story when I was in college at NYU in the 1980s, and I'd never read anything like it. It was right when the cyberpunk movement just started, and science fiction had been very kind of, you know, like space opera kind of stuff. And all of a sudden there was this gritty, really weird story about this family that shot themselves into space and were creating an artificial intelligence, and I wanted to live in this world. So that's where we get to the next thing, which is that we're finally getting to live that story. So about, 2 years ago, I joined Amazon. And when we talk about Amazon, I'm not with them anymore, but I left right before NAB. We talk about the Tessier Ashpools and them rocketing themselves into space. So basically the family of people who kind of rocketed themselves into space. Now, because the Large Hadron Super Collider basically turned us into one of the weirder realities in the metaverse, they're not just shooting their family into space, but they're bringing some other folks along with them, as you know. They shot Shatner into space. And so the thing about this is that the point I'm trying to make is that things are getting really, really weird right now. And to the point where we're actually living in the Neuromancer story. And Amazon is building just up the road in Pasadena at Caltech, they're building a quantum computer. Okay, that's part of one of their the areas that they're that they're working on as far as their what their development is. And AWS is also investing $100 million in generative AI in order to keep up with two other very large companies that are doing this, Microsoft and Google. And I would argue that artificial intelligence is already in your house, right? And basically it's listening to you, and it's, instead of doing nefarious things and everything, it's going, you should buy more toilet paper. And, that's kind of what this is all about. So I kind of wanted to put that into the context of the story that I'm trying to tell you about AI and what's going on right now. So obviously, another thing we have to talk about, and again, I'm not making light of this. I've been in the movie industry pretty much my entire adult life, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But we have to metabolize the fact that streaming has essentially, that business model doesn't work. It has collapsed, and ultimately, you guys know this. This is a candlestick chart of Disney's stock price. This was the last time I sampled this was Wednesday, so this was 2 days ago. Okay, and so you can see that right here is, it's obviously doesn't show very well here, but you can see right here is the beginning of the pandemic. And the pandemic, everybody's home, right? And basically they're like, oh, we're gonna be subscribing to Disney Plus and watching Disney Plus, and so everything's great. And unfortunately, they kind of drank the Kool-Aid of MAU. of monthly active users, basing your entire economics model on MAU, or monthly active users. Then everything is okay. You know, it's great. We're going to live forever. It's the best thing ever. And then bang, the recession starts. And the pandemic is over, and we end up down to the place where it's not unlikely that they could sell Disney potentially even to Apple, right? So this is the rumors that are going. This is, I mean, we're in this world right now, whether we like it or not. We're living this right now. So essentially, I've been going out and talking to people and taking pictures. This is one of my photographs from, was at Fox and Netflix and some of the other places, trying to kind of understand where everybody's at in this world. So I just wanted to kind of ground that in the reality. And, you know, more importantly, if we talk about Wintermute in Hollywood, I want to, you know, there's some aphorisms that we've heard all week this week, which is the genie is out of the bottle, right? And basically Pandora's box has been opened, right? I mean, you know, we've heard this all week. There's nothing we can do about it. And so what I'm specifically going to talk to you about is generative adversarial networks. And if you don't know how they work, again, all this AI stuff, there's so much hysteria around it. Just take, you know, go and read or watch some documentaries on it. There's some really good stuff on it. And my favorite way of thinking about it is as the art forger and the cop, right? That's the best sort of analogy I've seen, which is that there's an art forger and he's trying to create a picture that is going to pass the art forgery experts' opinion that it's a forgery or not. And they keep going back and forth. And that's why it's a generative adversarial network. And that's a very kind of, you know, a very sort of high level description of what it is, but it's not bad. And it's worth thinking about. And I will tell you that some of the most sort of really, really smart people that I know have said, you know, a while back told me, Lasky, ignore this at your peril. You have to start to look at this as a tool for storytelling and all of that. So I don't have to tell you, tension is running at extreme heights right now. And everybody, I'm unaffiliated right now, so I can say all these sort of politically charged things and get away with it, or potentially not, but we're gonna see that. But so the idea basically is that you've seen what's going on. There's, you know, this stuff is going on. There's the actors, you know, the writers are super upset, and the actors are saying, oh my God, we're, you know, they're gonna come, they're gonna performance capture us, and we're gonna, you know, essentially they're going to use AI for everything. You know, this was at one of the things that I was at, one of the strike walks that I was at. And, you know, you've got the sort of mob. If you tell them you're using generative AI, the mob is going to come and, you know, these are like the Frankenstein villagers with the torches and the picks, and they're going to come and try to kill you, right? Or, more frightening for me, the ghost of Fran Drescher is going to appear to me at night, and she's going to say, what are you doing? You're crazy. Stop this. And so ultimately, all of this is, again, this is all happening right now in real time. This is not history. This is the present. So let me go back and tell you about myself a little bit. Why do I care about any of this? Well, for a couple of reasons. And I'll give you some history on me. I don't want to spend too much time, but I used to work for these guys. You know who this is? Silicon Graphics, okay? And Silicon Graphics, I worked for 5 years for these guys. And Silicon Graphics was the company that came in with the big iron computers. And we were the ones at the very forefront of changing the sort of visual effects landscape. And of course, everyone yelled at us and said, Lasky, you're the Antichrist. You're going to kill everyone. We're, you know, we're all going to die. Dogs and cats will live together in sin. You know, it's going to be horrible. So I'm used to this. And not only am I used to it, but I'm used to it because of this too. I worked on the very first 4K digital movie camera. I have a big background in cinematography and sensor design and all of that. And I used to work for Panavision and places like that. And then I went to work for Dulce, the very first 4K digital movie camera. And you guys remember when we were switching from 35 millimeter film over to digital? They were going to burn me at the stake, right? They were like, you know, you are a terrible person, Lasky, which may be true, but nonetheless, they were like, oh, you know, you can't do this. You're going to kill everyone. All the jobs are going to go away. You're a horrible person. So I was used to that. And then if we go further back, does anybody know who that is? That is Cecil B. DeMille, and that is his original business partner, Jesse Lasky. Okay, so my ancestor, Jesse Lasky, came out here with Cecil B. DeMille. And you know why they came out here? Because they were trying to get away from the patent office. They came on the East Coast. You had to shoot with the Edison cameras, and they had patent goons beating the shit out of you if you didn't use their cameras. So that's why they came to Hollywood. And what Jesse Lasky started was something called the Famous Players Lasky Company, which became Paramount, and there's still a Lasky building on the Paramount lot. So I actually go back in history with this stuff, and I actually really do care. And so ultimately, again, I live this. This is a very tough time, and you've got people like this going out. A robot would make a great CEO, and all of that kind of stuff. So ultimately, this is why I care. So I actually started to think, well, okay, there's this technology, this artificial intelligence technology that everyone is now so terrified of. And I was like, you know what? Let me go and start to try to use it. So I started to use ChatGPT and DALL-E and a bunch of other things. And I was like, wait, this is what everybody's afraid of? This? This is not what they think it is. It's not Satan that's this digital Satan that's pervasive and is gonna take everybody down. And so I started to train it. And so this is funny because I always refer to it as Wintermute, right? And everyone says, don't anthropomorphize artificial intelligence, don't turn it into something like you talk to it like a human. And I'm like, no, definitely anthropomorphize it and definitely talk to it like a human. And there's been a lot of great stuff done. Did you guys watch, it's on Peacock, it's something called Mrs. Davis. Did you watch Mrs. Davis? Oh, you got to see it. It's great. It's an AI, a great AI story. And there's a crazy Australian guy, and the AI is called Mrs. Davis, and the woman who's the lead is about to say the name, and the crazy Australian guy goes, "Don't give it a name. Nobody calls Facebook Doug." And it's awesome. It's completely insane. But so what is Wintermute good at? And we're very entertainment industry centric, and we always think that we're the ones who everything's developed for us and everything, but that's absolutely not true. Some really interesting things have been happening, and they've been applying the AI to, there's maybe 7 people who can read cuneiform on the planet, and there's like 5,000 cuneiform tablets that are out there that need to be translated. And they threw some basically large language model AI training at this problem, and they solved it really quickly. Now, of course, rather than magic spells and wonderful history, it was mostly like delicatessen orders, right? Like, you didn't pay for your pastrami. And so, as most of these things are, it's essentially it's not the most exciting stuff, but they were able to translate it, and it's great that they did. And I've always been a Mayan history fan, and so very soon they're throwing it at all of the Mayan hieroglyphs, the glyph language, right, which is very difficult to read as an epigrapher unless you're very well trained. And so there's a ton of stuff, and I'm sure you guys know they're flying aerial LiDAR over the jungles in Guatemala and Mexico, and they're finding tons more of these Mayan ruins out in the jungle, and they're going to be able to do that. So that's one thing that Wintermute's able to do really well. The other side is, and I'm sure all of us have had someone that we were close to get very ill, and the whole idea of bioinformatics and basically being able to do genomic sequencing of diseases and all of that, the ability to run bioinformatics processing, which is hugely computationally expensive, very good thing for AI to do. Now, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but ultimately the other side is that in defense, they're doing a lot of really interesting things. And this is what they call, it's the XQ-58A drone, but it's called the Loyal Wingman. And basically what the Loyal Wingman is supposed to do, it's like the wingman when you see in the World War II movies, like, Bucky, they're on my 6, come and take them out, right? It's basically like, it's gonna fly with regular aircraft, and it's going to do electronic warfare and what they call suppression of enemy air defense and all of that. So it's basically the Loyal Wingman drone. And I sort of like that idea for AI. And this is where it's gonna get a little crazy. So so I thought, this is actually really cool. I used to work with a lot of art departments, and I used to work with a lot of, sort of technology, in the art department and in visual effects for doing look development. And so I started using essentially Midjourney. That was the one that I sort of glommed onto. And what I really like about it too, in this idea of anthropomorphizing the AI, is that you talk to it like a, essentially you would you talk to it as over Discord. And so anyway, let's talk about that. So it's great for early stage projects. We don't have a lot of money. I did all this in Midjourney. And so let's talk about one very particularly, which is, you guys must know that Winnie the Pooh has gone into the public domain. So some of the friends that I used to do comedy with said, let's do this Apocalypse Now with Winnie the Pooh, right? And so this is a perfect thing. Now, because I have a good background in camera and animation and all of that kind of stuff, I had them essentially. I asked Midjourney. I prompted Midjourney to start looking at like what would it be like if we had Apocalypse Now done as essentially a Winnie the Pooh story, and so. The one that we ended up liking the most was this one. We liked this look the most because it was the sort of most look like a 3D movie and everything. And so, because I have a background in camera and a background in filmmaking and everything, we started to say, okay, well, let's start doing some casting with generative AI. So we said, okay, who would play the Robert Duvall part? And we're thinking, well, that's got to be Tigger, right? And so, this is the someday this war's going to end. I love the smell of napalm in the morning. That's that character. And then who's going to play the Brando part, the Colonel Kurtz part? Well, we thought for sure it's going to be Eeyore, right? And it's going to be, essentially the, and I tried to get Vittorio Storaro's lighting right and everything. And this one, you're Winnie the Pooh are a errand boy sent by grocery clerks to collect the bill. So that would be the Brando part. And then, of course, we have another important part, which is Dennis Harper, and that would be Piglet, right? Of course, and like you can't land on a quarter, you can't land on a half, man. That's dialectic physics. So ultimately, this is what this stuff is really great for, and you shouldn't take it so seriously that it becomes like this, giant weight. So anyway, we also thought that the guys living at the temple would be the Muppets, right? So ultimately, all the people that were, so this is what it's really a great tool for this kind of silly visualization. We never budget for it. I'm not putting anybody out of work. We never, not only that, if I tried to basically tell people what I was going for, they'd be like, you keep them busy, I'll go for help. Ultimately, this is just, it's silliness, but it's great. It's a great tool for visualization. Now, taking it a little bit further, and I know, am I running out of time here? I guess I am, yeah. All right, so, give me just a few more minutes here. So one of the other things I looked at was time travel. And basically, I'm a big Mayan study, so I said, look, show me what a daguerreotype photograph of a Mayan city would look like back in the day. And it starts to produce this kind of stuff, right? And it's really great if you know how to prompt it for photography and lenses and that kind of stuff. You can get this kind of imagery out of it, and it's great. And I call it pulling on the narrative thread. I'm a very sort of visual person, and I want to see something as I kind of create a story. I want to be able to see something, and then it helps me sort of move forward in that story block. Now, this is, I'm a big fan also of Roman history, and this is, like I said, I asked it to show me the Battle of the Teutoburg Forest. So that was what that was all about. Now I'm going to go pretty fast. But what it's really great for, like you saw with Winnie the Pooh, is other realities. And one of the things I was really keying off of was the idea of essentially how we fetishize technology in the movie industry. And I was thinking, what if computers had been in the movie industry since the very beginning? And so I started in the Weimar Republic with like the era of kind of Metropolis and all of that kind of stuff. And what I was really going for here was the idea that, how we see all these pictures in like American Cinematographer and on the web and everything of people kind of sitting there with machines, right? And so I wanted to get the lighting right from the Weimar Republic. And then what would happen if they actually had artificially intelligent robot actors at that time, right? And again, just riffing, right? Just riffing, visually riffing. And then what happens if those were used in stage plays and in movies? Then that made me think, well, they would have, these Germans who put this together in the Weimar Republic would have had analog computers controlling artillery in World War I. So I told them, show me a sort of a piece of artillery controlled by an analog computer back in World War I, like the Battle of Passchendaele. And it's great for this stuff. And again, you can tug on the narrative strings. And then I thought, well, what would happen if we took it into the Technicolor era, right? And again, what if we had computers in the Technicolor era and like instead of, these like large, and again, it's great at doing these kind of conceptual machines. And then this is my idea of like later on in the 60s when it had like instead of a 3-strip Technicolor camera, now a 6-strip RGB CMYK camera. And I told it to give me an Italian cameraman. And this is, look at the hair mousse and everything. So it's great for that sort of stuff. So anyway, so let's talk though about roadblocks really quickly. I think I'm out of time, right? Yeah. Okay, 5 minutes. Yeah, I can wrap it up. I can talk fast. So I want to talk about roadblocks to this. So the biggest roadblock of all is intellectual property right now. Copyright, IP and copyright on this is an enormous issue, right? We don't know what the provenance of these images was. Especially on these large models like Midjourney, where we don't even know what it was trained on. Adobe has a great idea where they're training it only on their licensed imagery and stuff like that. So this is going to be a huge issue. Now, this was on June 8th of this year. Again, we're living this in real time. There was an amazing talk called the Synthetic Media Summit, and part of that was an IP talk. And there were some great people. Nikki Pope is the chief counsel for NVIDIA. And then this woman right here, who I think it's really important to know, is Angela Dunning on the bottom. And she was the one who defended the photographer against the monkey in the monkey selfie trial. And if you remember, the monkey selfie trial was when the monkey took a picture of itself, and then a bunch of sort of like PETA groups got together, and they sued the photographer and said, no, the monkey should be assigned copyright here. And this became a huge issue as far as like AI is concerned, because how do you assign copyright to a non-human entity? Now, because I'm a jackwagon who likes to stir some things up, I actually went into Midjourney and said, create me a new version of the monkey selfie, right? So this is the kind of thing that would make a lawyer have vapor lock, just right? And, so that's basically what that was for. So this is a huge potential roadblock for us. The other one is legislative and public policy. And I'll just go straight through this really quickly. Everybody wants to handcuff Wintermute. We have, and again, I don't disagree with these people, but the IATSE has released their core principles of using AI. There's these guys that are doing the human artistry campaign. And then this happened like last month on July 3rd. They actually went to the White House and had a readout of like, oh, what's going to happen with generative AI? And so you would have wanted to be a fly on the wall for that one, right? Because, God knows. And then the biggest one, unfortunately, is going to be cost. And training large language models and generative adversarial networks is really expensive. And right now we're experiencing a gilded age of AI use. Like you can go and pretty much use this stuff. But the problem is there's no currently viable business model for the generative AI vending machines, including the ones I use, that are in use. And you either know it or you don't, but the economics are going to catch up with the hype, especially in the entertainment industry. And I'm sure you guys have been following it, or maybe you haven't. But there's a huge GPU shortage. Right? It's huge. It's massive. And not only is it going to, and we're not first in line. Like the National Institute of Health is probably in front of us, right? And DARPA is in front of us for all this stuff. So that's going to be a huge issue. And so what I would recommend is just watch where the venture capital dollars go, right? See where that's going. And if you're interested, bank as much, do your own Winnie the Pooh apocalypse now with Winnie the Pooh or whatever you want to do, and bank all that imagery right now, right? Because this gilded age is not going to last forever. And again, this is a good time for me to wrap up, because what I said, the 30 minutes is really not enough for everything I wanted to tell you. You can contact me. I'm Alan Lasky on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find. And I wanted to say thanks for listening. But I also just wanted to say, look, we, as artists and people in the movie industry, we're going to control where this goes, right? So go absolutely batshit nuts with this stuff. Right? And basically do something cool and because it's not to be feared. It's not coming to kill you. Yes, it's going to change jobs the same way that we changed some jobs when I was at Silicon Graphics and when I was at DALSA and all that, but it's going to balance out in the end. So that's basically what I wanted to say.
So have a hand. Everybody go batshit nuts.